All right, let's continue with domain 5.1. So change management procedures. So this is going to be a systematic approach to dealing with changes, kind of what we talked about in our first video. It's going to be a formal process and a step-by-step process for all changes that are going to involve documentation and review from multiple different levels. Onboarding and offboarding procedures. So these are procedures involved in integrating new employees and also managing their exit. During this, we want to safeguard the organization. So we want to make sure we have solid access control during the offboarding so that we don't have disgruntled employees that got laid off with still elevated privileges. And also during the onboarding, we want to make sure that we're still implementing our least privilege principles. Here, this is where we're going to have employees sign NDAs, AUPs, ensure that, and our role, ensure that they're aware of security policies and they understand the culture, right? That we do take security of our data very serious. Playbooks. So these are going to be documented procedures and instructions to guide how an organization responds to security incidences. So I've talked about this a lot during this course, and this is actually defining it. So in playbooks, ensure we have consistency in our response. It's going to go over scenario planning. So when we make playbooks, that's kind of also us, walking the dog on it, kind of game planning and war planning what could happen. And here's our playbook. And there's also continuous improvement. So just because we created a playbook a year ago doesn't mean it's effective now. So we want to make sure we're consistently testing these playbooks on a regular interval, right? It doesn't mean every week or every day. Just make sure we have something in place that says test this playbook every so often. So we want to have continuous improvement. We also want to understand our regulatory compliance. So as a security professional, we need to understand what our industry is and what compliance we must, or what regulations we have to be in compliance with. Legal considerations. So these are the legal aspects that influence an organization's security policies and practices. So we want to make sure we're aware of all the legalities that could be with safeguarding our intellectual property and our data in case we do have a data breach. What laws could we be in violation of, okay? Industry specific. So we talk about this a lot. A great example of this, an easy one, is if you have point of sale systems. If you're the credit card data processors, you have to be compliant with PCI DSS. And it's important that you're understanding of that, right? You understand your industry. It's also important that you have frameworks that also show you industry-specific threats, right? Because there's going to be APT teams that have their specialties that say, hey, we're dedicated to attacking industrial plants. You want to understand that as a member of the SOC team and a cybersecurity professional. We have local and regional security considerations. So it's not just always the country. Something could be local, right? Something that you're going to have to be aware of. We have national security considerations. So we have, especially in America and also like in Europe as well, we have to be aware of our national data protection laws, okay? And then global security governance. So when I look at this, I think, okay, if we're an international organization, we're not just worried about if we're based out of America, a big deal. If we're making money in Europe, we have to be aware about the GDPR, right? So we have to have multinational compliance. Huge hardware providers like Cisco, they're not shipping routers to China with K9 on it, right? Which means encryption. You have to be aware of that. Sometimes encryption isn't even allowed to be sold to private entities in other countries, okay? So you have to be aware about the global security and governance. Okay, let's go ahead and start our quiz. All right, so domain 5.1 quiz, procedures and external procedures. So question 1, how do industry standards influence an organization's security governance? That's going to be A, by providing a baseline for security best practices and helping organizations maintain competitiveness and interoperability. Question 2, what role do security playbooks serve in an organization's security governance framework. So they're going to provide standardized and step-by-step guidance, right, guys? Our playbooks are there to help us. We establish them so that can help us in the future. Question 3. Why is a structured change management procedure critical for effective security governance? That's going to be B, to provide a systematic approach for managing changes to IT systems, minimizing potential security risk and disruptions. Question 4. What is the primary security importance of having standardized onboarding and offboarding procedures? This is proper setup, right? We want to make sure that we're applying things correctly. We're having good onboarding of the employees so they gain trust in the organization, and we're doing all of our legal things we have to do. Question 5. Why is adherence to regulatory compliance important in security governance? This is to make sure that the organization's security practices meet legal requirements, avoiding penalties and protecting reputation. All right, last question. Why must organizations consider global factors in their security governance? This is to ensure that their security practices and policies align with international laws, standards, and cultural expectations.